So, our guest today has dedicated nearly 2 decades to pushing the boundaries of design. From their early roots experimenting with Photoshop 7 and Dreamweaver back in 2003, they've gone on to lead product design for some of the world's largest enterprises. Their work spans everything from intricate photo mosaic installations for Pfizer, which showcased over 10,000 employee images, to reimagining the digital interface of Penske's trucking fleet. Most recently, they've spearheaded the digital design of cloud-based platforms, and they were one of the early pioneers of the hybrid designer-developer role, teaching themselves front-end development skills to better collaborate with engineers. Outside of their prolific client work, they've also built an engaged community of over 145,000 designers across social platforms like Instagram and YouTube. And as an educator, author, and mentor, they're deeply passionate about empowering the next generation of UX talent. So, with that said, I'm thrilled to welcome Ruben Cespedes to the Samelogic podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Samelogic, smart intercept surveys that product teams love. Ruben, your career evolution has been quite remarkable. You've managed to continuously adapt and expand your skill set over nearly 2 decades, from growing from early and print design roots all the way to leading complex design systems. Outside of client work, you've built a personal brand as an educator and author with around 100,000 Instagram followers. That's pretty nice. As we progress, I'm excited to unpack your insights on transitioning into areas like user experience and product design. And I want to explore both the mindsets and tactical skills that have enabled you to stay on the cutting edge. And also, with the benefit of hindsight, what emerging specialties should designers invest in next?
It's all about adaptability, I would say. Of course, you get that with time and stuff like that, because before I was just a naive graphic designer, like just doing beautiful and appealing graphics and not even thinking about the user experience or how the user is going to react to this design. Like, none of that stuff was like in my mind first, but then as I progressed in my career, then I started like adapting to what the market what's asking me out there, right? Like, for example, like the communication between designers and developers, there was always and still today I've seen it, there's a disconnect between designers and developers. And because of that, I push myself to learn how to code, at least the basics of it. And because of I learned how to code HTML, CSS, JavaScript, ASP, and PHP, a little bit of that, it kind of like opened so many doors for me. And then that kind of adaptability like definitely plays a big role in this type of career.
And also earlier in your career, you pioneered the designer developer hybrid role. You mentioned like learning to code and everything. How difficult was it to skill up in development at first? And what key front-end languages or frameworks do you prioritize learning?
I would say, like, compared to nowadays, it's extremely difficult, because back then we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have like all these social media resources out there, or even like all these platforms like Teachable and Udemy and like all these things that you can buy like a course for $10 or $50 or $500. And we didn't have none of that. So I had to like go back into books and actually, like, if I wanted to, change an object or something, I had to use JavaScript, but I didn't know how to do that. I had to go into books and read it about it and try to type it in, test it out, fail many, many times. And then until I get it, which is kind of like the best teacher. I always say this, failure is your best teacher, because once you get it, then that's it. Like you're golden. So it was very, very difficult, but that never stopped me because of, I always have this mentality of how things function and how things work. And I invested myself into that and just like learn how to code, because I needed to speak that engineer language and see like what they were saying when we were presenting or handing off like design. And they were like, this is not feasible to do because you have so many different effects in there that I put in Photoshop and stuff. And we didn't have like absolute precision, right? Like CSS. We didn't have that back then. And then once I was part of that world, engineer world, it was a lot easier for me to understand and be empathetic with developers, engineers, and stuff. And that definitely pushed me to learn how to do it. Again, nowadays is it's a lot easier. There's a lot of resources out there. If you have the willingness to learn how to code, you will learn like pretty quick. Whereas before, again, us back in 2004 or 5, we have to like actually code it and fail. But yeah,
Yeah, thinking back, I remember to the time when a Twitter Bootstrap API came out and how that was like such a big deal. And now looking back, it's like, wow, that was like really, I know it's a big deal at the time, but compared to what we have now, like it's definitely progressed.
yeah.
So even thinking about that, seeing how things evolve very quickly over time, how do you effectively future-proof and architect flexible designs today?
It is impossible to think about that because technology is just evolving like so quick. I remember, again, back in the days, I used to create simple HTML pages and create my portfolio and create websites for clients and stuff like that. It was just like simple HTML and stuff. And then they were like, oh, well, they were requiring more stuff like, hey, we want to have a CMS website, whether it was like, I think Joomla was one, WordPress, of course, is one of the leading ones back then. I don't know if it still is, but then we had to adapt and just like because of the complexity of like of the project, hey, we require to have like a calendar in there, and then doing it like by just typing in and using HTML and JavaScript wasn't the best option, and then we had to again go into these platforms like CMS platforms to actually compensate for what the project required because technology is evolving so fast. It's just impossible to predict how you can structure a website. I mean, like there are some structure like having a responsive website, of course, having ADA compliance, make sure like your contracts are very high and everything. There are certain things like information architecture, for example, needs to be like, the user experience, all of this stuff, like you will have to put in place no matter what, like what you're using. Nowadays there are some tools like Framer and Webflow, Wix, and WordPress that definitely can help you create these solutions, and they are up to date with what's going on out there. But yeah, I would say it's almost impossible to predict and have like a perfect website or information architecture in your site without thinking about what's coming next, and then you have to adapt to what's coming next. But yeah, I would say having, if I have to say something about this, and it's just having like great information architecture, great responsive site, having your accessibility on point. There, SEO and all of that fun stuff, like in the back end, having all of that in there will definitely be a plus. Plus, I would say you have to adapt to the project, what the project requires. There's some websites that you develop that you probably didn't need to have a CMS site, right? You could do something like pretty straightforward with Webflow, and that's fine. But that's why it's very important, like in the discovery call or like when you are like researching, like what type of, in this case we're talking about a website, what type of website do you require? What do you see yourself like? How do you see this website in the future? And then thinking about that, like what's next will kind of like opened up like other questions, of course. And again, because if technology is evolving so fast, I have clients that had websites built in simple HTML, and then 2 years later they were like, oh, we need to transition to a WordPress site because we need more functionalities. And it's like because we back then they didn't think about that, right? Like they didn't think about scalability and how they're gonna progress. But it's very important to try to get those things out of the way at the beginning of a project.
On the topic of scalability, before you have a scalable product, you need to scale your mindset, right? So how do designers need to scale their thinking to have a greater impact on business today?
I would say it's all about where do you want to go as a designer. And I'm going to put myself into, I'm going to put myself as an example. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I became a graphic designer back in 2004, 2005. I was just a little kid, graphic designer, straight out of college, and wanted to, conquer the world with my designs, right? Like in New York City. And I didn't know like what type of career I was gonna build because I was very new, right? I was just like creating graphics and stuff. But then when I hit, I think it was 2007, that's when I kind of like make this switch to digital, more like instead of me like doing like editorial designs and in photography edition and manipulation and like print design and all of that and animation, I picture myself like, and I was reading a lot of blogs and stuff, like, what do I want to become? Like, what is it that I wanted to do in the future? And then I kind of like lean myself to the digital world, kind of like, I'm going to go into the digital aspect of this where we create, back then we didn't have mobile sites or even responsive websites. So I was just picturing myself like ahead of time, like, okay, so I want to do that. And then I did it, but then it opened so many doors for me because then from web design, then I jump into UX design and then product design, and look at where we are today, right? So I think it's just ideal for that graphic designers, and I think all of us, we go through that. We have a major in graphic design, communication design, human centered design, and we don't know like where we're gonna go. But if you have like a North Star, like you wanted to do something and just specialize on something, then do that, and then learn every single day about it. Like, and then if that doesn't work for you, you can switch lanes to something else. Maybe you're not that great at user experience, but probably you are really good at brand design. Then take that lane. That's why we tap into so many different things and just see like which one sticks, and also which one do you like the most. And I definitely recommend that. You have to go as a designer, you have to go through and tap into all these, like being a print designer, being a web designer, being a brand designer, an animator, a photographer. And then from those fields, then which one do you like the most, enjoy the most? And do you think you can build a career around that? And then you take it from there.
I love that. You spoke about experimentation earlier on, and you credit a creative director that pushed you to experiment from earlier on. Outside of structured roles, though, where and how can young designers find those crucial mentors, and like what communities would you advise them to engage with first?
Again, back then we didn't have like all these, websites and stuff that we have nowadays. The mentors that we got, that we get, was from either our current jobs back then, and also going into events and meeting people, networking, and all of that stuff. Nowadays, there's a lot of like mentors out there, and I always recommend people to go ahead and look for a mentor, because mentors can definitely help you elevate your skill sets, and they will help you pave that road that you want to go. I got that, this mentor telling me like, hey, you should experiment. And because I was cased on a simple like design, and I was just like locked in with that type of design style. And when he told me that, I was just like, why is he saying that? But I didn't know he was teaching me something. And then because I heard him, I started experimenting, and I still till today, 19 years later, I use that, that quote. That was the best, I would say, that was the best advice I ever got. And, right now we have websites like ADP List has tons of resources out there. There's a lot of websites out there that help designers, and not designers only, but non-designers and technical, jobs, to, to get mentorship. And it's very, very important to definitely get a mentor. Social media, that's insane. I mean, there's a lot of mentors there. There are ones that are questionable, but there are some great mentors out there that definitely, you can check them out.
Also, when it comes on to leadership as well, I think leadership can help nurture your individual creativity. How do you create space for innovation and experimentation within teams under pressure to deliver on business goals?
When it comes to leadership, and just like, you have to think about supporting your culture, right? Like supporting the culture, you have to like set some real goals and objectives That's very, I would say that's very, like, it needs to be on top of it. Promoting and promoting learning and development. It's another one that I would say it's very important. You have to, celebrate also successes. If you're part of a team and one of your teammates it's working on something and everything got approved and everything is like up and running, why not celebrate one of your teammates or successes? That's very, very important. Also, I would say provide feedback, constructive feedback. It's another one that, as a leadership, as part of leadership and how you support your team, it's part of growth, not only just for the teammates and the coworkers, but also for yourself if you're a leader. When people look at leaders, they want people to guide them and not just like tell them what to do. We don't look for managers. Let's say managers can manage your time and they macromanage and they do this and we don't like that, right? Nobody likes that. But then if you're a leader, you provide a positive in culture, I would say, and also set expectations and goals, and then you support that person, and you provide them with learning tools like, hey, there's a new application out there that I want you to learn it because it's going to elevate you. Like, that's the type of leadership that we're looking for.
Speaking about leadership and education and like career advancement, you've mentioned like the importance of like design education through formats like YouTube content, right?
Yeah.
What do you think Gen Z designers need most right now in their learning journey, whether through self-teaching or through academic programs?
Everyone is different, I would say. I get this question all the time when people ask me, like, should I do a boot camp? Should I go to college? Everyone is different, right? I have designers, amazing friends, designers that they taught themselves how to do stuff, but they had that mentality. They can teach themselves how to do stuff. I'm one of those that I can teach myself how to do stuff and it works for me. Whereas other people, they might not be as good as me or as good as you or as good as others learning by themselves. They need a guidance. They need a teacher, and that's fine too. So you have to ask yourself, like, what's the method that works for you for learning? Everyone is different, right? So once you get that, then whether using a boot camp or whether using uh, a like self-taught, like you reading on free resources out there, that is up to the individual, I would say. But you have to like identify that before you jump into it. People just jump into conclusions. Gen Z right now, I would say they're very impatient. They just want to learn things in a week, which is impossible, and that's not going to happen. I have people saying, hey, I want to become a UX designer within 3 months and get a job. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're not getting a job in 3 months because being a UX designer takes time and patience. And that's what I see nowadays is people wanted to jump into the wagon of UX because they think it's something super simple to do. But then when they hit that wall, they're very frustrated and they don't know what's happening and why the system is like that and why I'm not getting, any jobs and everything. And it's because, it's difficult. That's one thing. But also there's a lot of competition out there. You're not competing with yourself or, like with another designer. You're competing with, top class, UX designers in the world if you're applying remotely, of course. So yeah, they need to be patient. They need to be patient. They need to take a step back and see like type of education do I need in order to achieve what I want? Whether it's like, can I teach myself how to do stuff and I'm good with that, or do I need or to rely on a teacher or an academic program to kind of like guide me one by one? It's all about like your preference.
When it comes on to computing, and like designing experiences, more and more of that over the years has moved to the cloud. I think pretty much if you do most of your work in Figma, like you're pretty much on the cloud, like 100%.
Yep.
What unique UX challenges and opportunities does that create for product designers, and how will the role need to adapt when designing in a cloud first world?
Yeah, the more we advance, the more it's insane. Back to the roots, we used to have books and stuff. Now it's like then we have to like download programs to our systems and everything. And now it's like, oh, it's in the cloud already. And it's gonna keep evolving more and more and more. We don't even know like where this is gonna take takes us, right? But I would say like data analytics is it's a good thing to think about. Personalization is another one that it's good to think about too, and also the integration with other services, right? We see that in Figma, since you brought it up, you have Figma, but then you have other plugins that allows you to tap into other things that you can do in Figma, which make things a lot better and more efficient. So I would say people need to just embrace what's coming. Again, we didn't know we could design back in 2018, 17. We didn't know we could design in the browser. That was just impossible to think
Yeah.
about, right?
Yeah.
And now look at us, like we're designing stuff in the browser, which is insane. And then I think it's just gonna get better and better and better. And I'm up for, AI and all these technology coming out. It's just like you need to adapt to what's happening out there and get the most out of it.
Speaking about adaptability and most of the world moving online as well, even like most of the working world pretty much over the last couple of years, especially with COVID, have been remote. Like people work with a lot of remote teams now. What tips do you have for fostering collaboration and creativity when teams are distributed? And how do you effectively build community using this distributed method?
Yeah, I think remote has existed for a long time. It's just like after COVID, of course, everyone just like went remote completely. The majority of tech companies and other companies too. And it's all about communication, like it's all about fostering that, let's connect. Of course, we miss that interactivity when when you go to an office and you're like, hey Dwayne, how you doing, man? How's it going? How's the project? And we talk chit chat a little bit about family or stuff that happened, but then switch up right away into switch the gears into work mode. And hey, how's that application coming along? Like, do you have some time to talk about the splash page and this and that?
Collisions,
We're missing.
collisions.
Yeah, exactly. We're missing that part. Exactly. I think, Zoom, for example, like made a big, make it better. They were very proactive, and Zoom was what I would say Zoom was the first one. I would say to be on all the monitors. Of course, Google Meet and all this other platforms also, but Zoom, I think, was the one that took the leadership on this and started like they knew what was happening. So they started like implementing all these features because they knew that we needed as consumers, we needed to have more communications with our teammates. Also, like I've seen people that they do like breakout rooms and stuff, that they do fun stuff just to connect with people, but because that's what we need. And we're missing it. Still nowadays, there are some teams that we just talk about work and that's it. And then bye bye and later. And there's no connection. There's not that human connection. It's more about work, 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 work. Because of course, company wants things to be done pretty fast, as we know. But it's just like that collaborative, connection, human connection that we need. I think if fostering that is just it's the key to have better products, better designs, and better culture actually for companies.
Looking back over the past 20 or so years, what past era or trend in web design or app design do you think stands out as being truly special or truly iconic? And what made that period so special?
I'm not pretty big on trends because I was when I was like a graphic designer and just like, oh, this is really cool. Like you could do glass morphism or whatever. Well, back then we didn't have that. But just thinking about that back then, we used to follow trends like crazy. And there are people still that follow trends, but trends come and go, and that's it. They come and go, and that's it. They don't solve your problem. And that's the big problem. Like some designers, there's a new thing that comes out and it sticks because everyone is doing it right. For example, bento boxes, like the bento box design now, it's pretty cool. It's like it's kind of cool having like those blocks separated by, I don't know, 20 pixels margin left and right, and having these boxes one next to another one. That might work for Apple that they did it, right? But that doesn't mean that this trend it's for your product because you probably have a different product that requires different, information architecture, for example? What if you're missing millions of dollars because you just wanted to apply this bento box because it looks cool into your, product, and then maybe you have that CTA at the bottom right, and people are just seeing all these boxes on the top, but then the CTA is at the bottom, buried at the bottom, and you're missing millions and millions of dollars because of that. That's why I don't follow trends. I do know about them and see, like, if it makes sense for that particular project that you're working on, then do it. Then do it. That makes sense. But the problem with some designers nowadays is just like they see something that comes out and they're like, oh, I'm gonna do that for this project. I don't care. It's just like it looks good. And they don't think about the user experience. They don't think about the company goals and objectives, and they can hurt the company and they can hurt the product. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of trends. Again, I respect them. I think they look cool. They do a purpose. They help us understand them and how they came about, and you can try them out and see how it feels, how it works. But if it doesn't make sense to use it in your product, then don't do it.
I agree. I agree. When it comes on to past eras, though, I could say like for between 2009 to 2012, perhaps the world was kind of going through this weird period where we had like the launch of the iPhone, right? And then we
Mhm.
had Microsoft come out with like the Windows Phone, and then like Microsoft like was like shipping like new technologies left, right, and center like very quickly. They had photosynth, they had Microsoft Silverlight, and like at that time, like everyone thought like it was gonna take over Flash.
Yep.
But pretty much, yeah, like, to me, like that era was just like really wild because that's even when we kind of like switch from like skeuomorphic to flat, and like seeing like how like design changes and everything kind of just like to me like yeah that was like one of my like favorite era, like seeing like how did like everything kind of like change in that period. I'm kind of like wondering if there are like any like periods akin to that, like either like if we're going through one right now. I know like people are kind of like mixing like flat and skeuomorphic now, but not like surface level like that, but like like a major technology. We're undergoing like a change in AI right now as well.
Yep.
But yeah, like what eras do you think are truly iconic?
I would say like right now with the brink of AI and all these tools that are that's kind of like the hot topic as of right now. It's like what's coming out next, like what's coming out next for designers, for developers. Like for example, like there's a new technology called it's for engineers, which is like insane. It's called Devin,
Ah,
and
yes,
it's
definitely AI. Yes.
7 AI, which is insane. And it's, had some engineers like worried about like their jobs and stuff. And it's not like just embrace technology and use it to your advantage. You see, that's the era that we are living on right now. It's like something comes out with AI that is gonna enable you to make things a lot faster. I mean, for example, for engineers, will help you create these complex, solutions that you need to tackle. For example, Galileo AI, it's another one that came out, and it's to create, it's a type in prompt, you type in a prompt. I wanted to design a website for a research, and it'll give you designs based on your prompt, and then you can take those designs straight into Figma. So you see how we have to adapt now to this new technology that is emerging now. And it's, again, people just going afraid, like, oh, we're going to lose our jobs. No, the people that are not embracing AI and utilizing it to their advantage, those are the ones who will have some struggles. But the ones that are phasing AI and using it to their advantage, those are the ones that will prevail, per se.
I love that. I love that. Ruben, this is my last question here. I ask everyone who comes on the show this question, and that is, what's one weakness that you've turned into your strength?
Ooh, I would say impatient. I and I talk about impatient all the time. I'm an impatient person, meaning when I have to do something, I need to tackle that thing straight up, like because I'm very impatient. But then I transform that impatient into that driving force to complete what I needed to do and be creative. So I definitely know, and this is something that it's part of my actually it's part of my my personal brand, where you, instead of when I was creating my personal brand, you always, when you go with positive things, right? In this case, because I was mentored by Chris Do, which is an amazing designer, speaker, entrepreneur. He talks about, like, think about its personal brand, right? Like, think about something of you that only you know and not a lot of people know. Impatient, and then pick two words of that are negative words and turn them into positive. So I pick two words, and I pick impatient and grumpy, and then turn those things into positive. Two negatives, it's equal to positive. So that's what I did. So my impatience is that driving force, and that because I'm driving with this impatient, and I'm channeling that energy to learn a new skill, for example. And that's what I think it has, kind of like drive me where I am today, because I was impatient to learn how to code, for example, but then I, channel all that energy into that, and it opened so many doors for me. That's your answer.
I love that. I love that. Ruben, thank you. Thank you so much for being our guest today. You learned so much about you, about what you do. Yeah, man, amazing stuff.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.